Another man.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishna Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Vinamani Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasachadi Satarine Om Maganattamananda Shyaganangana Shalakaya Chakshunvitam Yena Tasme Shri Gurave Namaha.
She wanted you to tell them who you are, when you were initiated, and where. When and where.
Okay. My name is Sahadeva. I was initiated by Prabhupada in 1972 in Sydney, Australia. And it was maybe how many devotees? 50, 60 devotees, I think, were initiated at that time. And so at that time, the temple president would give a temple name to every devotee who joined. You need.
She's translating.
She's just going as I'm talking.
Yeah.
I'm going simultaneously. Please don't slow down. Just don't pay attention.
Okay.
Expert.
Yes, yes. So now, when we were getting initiated, then Prabhupada would get a list of the devotees and their temple names. So he was initiating, giving the temple name as the initiated name. And, I wasn't really comfortable with that. I really wanted Prabhupada to give me a name personally. So, and another thing is the GBC, Naresvara Swami at the time, he's the one that actually wrote the list, but he didn't put my name on there. I won't go into the politics of that. But so all the brahmacharis, they were initiated first. And then it was the women. So my name didn't come up. And I'm thinking, Prabhupada must not have my name on that list. So therefore, I made up my mind, okay, when the women are finished, then I will personally ask Prabhupada for initiation. So, so then all the brahmacharinis got initiated. So that when the last one got initiated, and I was counting all of them, I knew which would be the last one. So then I stood up. And Prabhupada saw me, and Prabhupada came like this. I didn't even have to ask Prabhupada. Prabhupada just said, come. And so he turned to the Madhavisa and he said, no, Madhavisa, he said, as I was coming up, he said, his name is Sutadev. So then, and Prabhupada said, no, his name is Sahadeva. So I had my desire fulfilled. Prabhupada personally gave me my initiated name. Shall I keep going?
Yeah.
Huh? Okay. Yeah. Prabhupada loved his disciples so much. There are so many examples of that. Once, I think it was Brahmananda, he went to an Egyptian country to preach. Was it in Delhi or Mumbai? Prabhupada was giving a big pandal and preaching. So when an Indian man said to Prabhupada, he said, you are preaching to the Indians our own culture. And he said something to Prabhupada, something like, you should preach to people who know nothing. Go to the Muslim countries and preach. Brahmananda, right? Yeah. So Prabhupada sent Brahmananda to you know the country? Pakistan. Yeah, that's right, Pakistan. And then there was a civil war starting in Pakistan. And so when Prabhupada heard that, he immediately sent a message to Brahmananda, you come back immediately. So when Brahmananda came back, when he walked into the room with Prabhupada, Prabhupada immediately got up, rushed over to him. And just like a mother who thought she lost a child, he was he was touching Brahmananda, you know, just to make sure he was still there and it was all in one piece. So Prabhupada loved his disciples so much. And once in Melbourne, because, you know, we had installed deities in Melbourne. Prabhupada personally installed the deities. And so we didn't have a lot of money in those days. This is what, 1974 or something, I think this happened. So, and so, you know, we wanted beautiful garlands. We got Gauratai, Jagannath Balaram and Subhadra and Radha and Krishna deities. So we would go and steal flowers from the botanical gardens and other places in the city at, like, you know, 3 o'clock in the morning. So anyway, one time some devotees got caught and they were taken to court and charged with stealing flowers. Now there wasn't a very big punishment for that. But so we had a lawyer who was very favourable to us, and he was a gentleman, and he was a really nice man, and very, very, very talented as a lawyer. So he represented us in court, and so not long after that, Prabhupada came to visit Melbourne. And so Prabhupada was in the room, and there were some devotees, including myself, and there was this lawyer. And so there was Prabhupada was talking to the lawyer, and it was a cordial conversation, talking about different things. And then the lawyer, he inferred that the devotees stealing flowers was wrong. And so Prabhupada just machine gunned him with just one shloka after the another, how someone who is not a devotee, is not a Vaishnava, has no good qualities. And Prabhupada just went on and on and on. And I was thinking, God, you know, he may be feeling a bit uncomfortable by now. But he took it really well. And then after that, then Prabhupada started glorifying his devotees and was saying that, that devotees have all the good qualities. First of all, those who are not devotees have no good qualities, and those who have who are devotees have all good qualities. So that was one instance where you know, I saw how much love Prabhupada had for his disciples. Even just a slight inference that his disciples did something wrong. And there was another one. Yeah.
Come back to you.
Huh?
The mic will come back to you.
Who?
You know, this is just on men before ladies.
Men before ladies.
You want to go?
Ladies before gentlemen. I'm not speaking.
Yes.
We're all female anyway.
I'm here to hear you two.
Hare Krishna. My name is Racitambara Dasi. Joined in 1972, November. Next November, it'll be 50 years. I'm looking forward to that one. Okay, so two things just sparked my thoughts. When Naresvara Prabhu was singing, I was remembering when I first joined, there wasn't any such thing as a songbook. So what we would do is we would stand in Mangalarti or Guru Puja or wherever next to somebody else that was older, an older devotee than us, and trying to follow along what they were saying. And then the next day you might be beside somebody else, and it was quite different. And then when we got the songbooks, everybody got one right away. And we were at Mangalarti with our songbooks, and everybody looked so bewildered. Really? Those are the words? It just sparked that memory. And he just sparked a memory, Sahadeva Prabhu, talking about stealing flowers. This is I'm getting ahead of myself on this one, but anyway, it's a little known story and I don't want to forget it. I've never seen it written down, but I lived it, so I know it. One year this was LA Temple, it was Janmashtami, and as we all know, Janmashtami is the time when lotus flowers bloom. And so I was a pujari and we were saying, oh, it would be so nice to have lotus flowers for the deities, for Rukmini, Dwarkadish. And then somebody said, you know what, there's a big botanical gardens here, and they might have lotus flowers. So, so somebody went and checked it out. Yes, and they were blooming. Okay, big, huge pond of them. So we got it all organized. The men dressed up in like black ninja suits, you know, they had black balaclavas and black clothes, and the girls were all waiting in the temple room with like, you know, garland needles and thread, and in the middle of the night, this is like 2 in the morning or something, they went sneaking over there and they climbed the wall, because of course the place was closed, and they stole every last lotus flower in the place, brought them back. Boy, did we have fun decorating the altar and making fabulous garlands. It was amazing. Luckily, Prabhupada was somewhere else that year. Anyway, it was just really astounding. And next morning in the newspaper, some headlines were like the lotus flower garden was raided, every last flower was taken. So we actually did this 3 years in a row. Because, you see, they may have been watching the lotus garden, but because we go by the moon calendar, it's a different date every year. So it was fabulous until the 3rd year when Prabhupada came, figured out where we got all the lotuses from, and said, from now on you order from Hawaii. Then we started ordering all our beautiful flowers from Hawaii. So that's the lotus flower story. Anyway. Okay, we can go with well, first of all, I'll start with this. This has a bit of a backstory. So when I was a young girl, very small, I really wanted to know why the sky was blue. Why is it some other color? Something else. Anyway, somehow that was important to me. And so I would ask everybody, every teacher I had. I would bother my father with this all the time. Finally, he bought encyclopedias, books of knowledge, different things. Finally, when I was older, he got the permission to go. I grew up in Ottawa, the capital of Canada, so they had a big Dominion Observatory for the whole of Canada, where all the big scientists were looking at the stars with telescopes, huge things. And he brought me to them, and I asked them. They didn't know either. Nobody knew. And so I was very disappointed, but what to do? There must be an answer. And then when I was 17, my mother died, and I was really searching for answers. What happens when somebody dies? You know, some people say there's something called reincarnation. You take another birth. Somebody says, you know, the good go to heaven and the bad go to hell. Somebody else says you just die, that's it, finish. But I'm a person that needs to know. I really need to know. So I started on a quest, you know, going to different countries, traveled around Europe, different places, going to so many different kinds of societies and religions, and changed my own religion and different things like that. And then one day I just said, I've had enough, I have to know. I walked out of the house with just the clothes on my back, and I walked around Vancouver, Canada, and I reached a corner called Georgia and Granville, where the devotees still do Sankirtan to this day. And there was a fellow in orange cloth, a red lumberjack jacket, bald head, and a ponytail. And he said, do you want some incense, little lady? I said, nah, I'm looking for God. He goes, oh, great. He pulled out a Bhagavad Gita, and he opened the book and showed me the picture of Gopal with his arm around the calf. He said, you found him. God is a blue boy with a flute. I said, man, you're crazy. I said, I've been to so many different religions. Nobody told me that God is a blue boy with a flute. he was quite a new devotee. He said, well, it's true, I think. And he came back to the picture of Srila Prabhupada. He said, he believes it, and he's our spiritual master. Then when I looked at Prabhupada, I thought, these are exactly my words, because I remember, this is the wisest, most all-knowing person I will ever meet. So I joined up, that was it, I'm still here. And so that eventually I married him. And we moved to LA, and in Los Angeles, Prabhupada was coming. Oh my gosh, that was so exciting. So we went to the airport with so many devotees, and I was still like a really new devotee, and we were at the airport, and the kirtan was getting bigger and bigger. There was several hundred devotees there, and there's a place where the passengers come out, and there's a wall in between. You can just see shadows coming, and a really tall person, you might see the top of their head. So somebody came out with a Texas hat on, a cowboy hat, a tall lady with flowers, but usually you couldn't see the top. But every time somebody else was coming, the kirtan would go up, the crowd would get closer, and then I felt somebody behind me pushing. And I thought, oh, I'm just new devotee. I thought I was in the back of the crowd. So I looked to see, and it was two businessmen. They were in suits with briefcases, the whole bit, just young businessmen. And they were like probably thinking, who's coming, the Beatles or something? You know, they wanted to know who's coming. And so then suddenly we saw above this little partition a danda waving. And out came Prabhupada. This big. He was not very tall, but he was huge. He filled the room, and everybody in the room just went down, paid their obeisances, and I did, and I felt like this tidal wave came up through me. It just came squirting out of me, roaring out of me. I cried, floods of tears. I just cried and cried and cried. It was the most purifying thing. I just cried and cried. Anyway, when I got up to follow the devotees out with Prabhupada, I turned, and these two businessmen were standing there with tears pouring down their faces. Just one moment's association of a pure devotee. How incredible. And I have prayed for them so many times over the years that they have found Krishna consciousness. I was too new. I would have just scooped them up and brought them back to the temple, but anyway, I was following. Anyway, so then it came. The next morning was going to be my first time I heard Srila Prabhupada speaking. And I was sitting in the balcony. I had my little baby who's now sitting in the back. But anyway, my little baby was in my lap, and she made some motion or noise or something, and I looked down. So I don't know exactly what Prabhupada was saying right at that moment, but as I looked up again, he said, and the reason the sky is blue, I went, it's the reflection of the color of Krishna's skin. Now you all know why it's blue. So at that point I said, okay, Prabhupada, I surrender. I'm here for the rest of my life. I'm not going anywhere. You know everything. He answered my really big question. So anyway, I'm still here. I can tell you hours about Prabhupada, but anyway, you want to have a go?
That's what they're here for.
Okay, I'll go a little more then. So then I was in LA. Eventually I got initiated by Srila Prabhupada. At that time, I loved the whole culture of, Krishna consciousness, and I loved wearing beautifully colored silk saris. That was my thing. I was a young girl and I loved the silk saris. I had many, and what we used to do was when it was a festival, Janmashtami, Radhastami, anything, we would get a new sari. This was Los Angeles, LA, New Dwarka. Anyway, I went to my husband one time, I said, Prabhu, it's Radhastami coming in a few days. I need a new silk sari, I have to have. He said, Mataji, look, go in your closet, count how many saris you have. So I went and I counted, I came back, I said, Prabhu, there's only 15 silk saris. He goes, okay, get another one. So it was like that. I loved these. So at my initiation, I was thinking, I really want a name of Radharani, like, you know, maybe Radharani or Rukmini. Are there any other names? We didn't know anything in those days. It was very small. Our knowledge was very small. One of those names, because my name was Rhonda, so therefore it must begin with an R. So Prabhupada, at the initiation, he said, and your name is Racitambara. I thought, who's that? That was my first thought. Then he said, Racitambara is a name for Radharani. And it means the one who wears the beautifully colored garments. He said, you are Racitambara Dasi. Not the one to wear the beautifully colored garments. I'm her servant. So that was my initiation. Okay, so I used to do a lot of pujari service. You want to have a go? I used to do a lot of pujari service in the early days, and I really loved that. And whenever I couldn't be on the altar or whatever, I'd be cleaning the pujari rooms or something. One night I was down in the pujari rooms. There was a room that you go through to go out to Prabhupada's garden, and it was at the bottom of Prabhupada's stairs. So I was in there doing some cleaning. It was the middle of the night. I used to go in when I could because I had a small child, and she'd be sleeping with my husband, and I'd be cleaning. It was like 2 in the morning. And suddenly I heard some noise, and I looked up, and Prabhupada was standing in the doorway. It's just me and Prabhupada, 2 in the morning. I stood up, I paid my obeisances, I stood up, I said what we all hope our whole lives we're going to be able to say, Prabhupada, how can I serve you? He said, I'm looking for Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And my mind whirled around. I thought, okay, all the sannyasis are here. I know where they're sleeping, through the kitchen, to the right. I'll go find him, Prabhupada. I'll just climb all over them until I find the right one. You know, anything for Prabhupada, whatever he wanted. So just then, as I was just heading out, I heard coming down the stairs, it was Prabhupada's servant, Upendra Prabhu at the time. He came racing down the stairs. Prabhupada's missing. Anyone seen Prabhupada? He came around the corner and he went, Dandavat, boom, like a banana tree falling down. And I said, he's looking for Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He said, I'll get him for you, Srila Prabhupada. I thought, yeah, better idea. Okay, so he went off to find Prabhupada, to find Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and Prabhupada said, thank you, and he went back up to his room. Prabhupada was in the mood of like kind of a little lost child in the night, you know? Just kind of looking for someone, you know? Anyway, he went back up to his room, and I was still standing in the doorway in wonderment, and these 2 ladies came in with like their luggage and non-devotee clothes into the pujari area, traveling clothes, you know? And I thought, who are you? And they started walking towards me, towards the only other place they could go is up to Prabhupada's rooms. I said, so I got in their way and I said, excuse me, can I help you? And one Mataji said, yes, we always come to see Srila Prabhupada as soon as we arrive, immediately when we arrive. I said, well, and just then, I was about to say, well, I'm sorry, you know, protecting Prabhupada. But just then, luckily, Upendra came back down the hall, again, did Dandavats and went, Jamuna! That's how I met Jamuna. So, anyway, I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. Anyway, the next morning, I was dressing little Rukmini Dwarkanath, and she came in with her deities and sat beside me. And I thought, oh, and she said, want me to show you how to make a turban? I said, yes, and we've been great friends ever since. So that was great. Anyway, another time I was in that same room, and it led out into Prabhupada's garden. And there was many sannyasis there he was speaking to. So I was dressing Tulsi for the evening arti. Prabhupada came in from the garden, and just as you go out of the room, because it was an old church, there was a little washroom there, bathroom there, you know? So we never used it because it's in the Pujari area. So I went to tell Prabhupada, I'm sorry, you can't use that. It's the Pujari area. If you use it, you'll contaminate it. No, Prabhupada won't contaminate anything. And I was going through all this in my mind. Meanwhile, he went in and closed the door. What to do? Then he came boiling out a minute later, yelling like anything that, yes, I got yelled at by Prabhupada. I'm so happy. Anyway, he was yelling like anything because there was no soap in the bathroom. Of course there was no soap. It was just an empty room we didn't use. Anyway, and he went on about how important it was. He yelled so much that the temple guard came running in to see what was going on. Anyway, Prabhupada went back out, and I went racing out to our little Sarabi store across the road, and I bought up all the sandalwood soap they had. Came back, I put a soap in that bathroom, and I went up to Prabhupada's quarters. I knew my way around because I cleaned the quarters. I made sure his bathroom had soap, and I was putting the rest away in the storage room. And then Prabhupada came up the stairs. Again, he wanted to go in his bathroom this time. I was in the way. So it happened like this. So I'm coming out of the storage room. Prabhupada's going in his bathroom. Everybody's coming up the stairs behind him. I went, Prabhupada came the same way. So I went, Prabhupada came back. And we went back and forth and back and forth. I didn't know what to do. Then I looked up at all the sannyasis and they were like, "Arr!" You know, woman, get out of the way. And finally, I just paid my obeisances and I stayed down till all the feet went away. Anyway, those are some of the LA stories. Why don't you have a go?
Yeah.
I got lots more.
You thought I was going to speak, huh? I'm Naresvara, you may know, and I was initiated in Mayapur in 1977. So you can see, I'm just a junior here, and so I'm here listening to these senior devotees. I actually joined a year before that. Prabhupada's coming. So I have a Prabhupada's coming story. I joined in Mexico City and found my way up to Washington after about a month. I couldn't speak Spanish, it was difficult down there. And I arrived in Washington at the temple. Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. I arrived there and I poked my head in the door and someone put a mop in my hand and said, Prabhupada's coming, you know, clean the temple. So that's what I did. I still had my suitcase sitting at the door. Anyway, that was 1976 when Prabhupada opened that temple, the Potomac temple. So I cleaned the temple and there was tons of devotees there, lots of sannyasis, practically the whole Racitambara group was there, about 6 buses. And so when you're Bhakta Norman, you don't get to see Prabhupada. You just do what you have to do. So I was serving, helping, doing whatever needed to be done. And the temple president, his name was Brihaspati, I think Brihaspati, something like that. He said to me, you want to come to the darshan? You know, he was appreciating the help I was giving him and his people. So I said, yeah. I didn't know anything about anything. I was like 1 month in the movement, but I was shaved up. So I said, yeah, please. That would be nice. So he said, okay, tonight you come. I don't know if some of you may have read, you know, that was the time when lots of scientists were coming and Prabhupada was speaking to them. I think, what's his name? Swarup Damodar Maharaj was bringing these different scientists, and they were meeting. But it was the evening darshan, so all the devotees were also there. The room was pretty packed. So anyway, I went in and I sat down on the floor, and the edge of the room had all these seats around there, where the guests were sitting. I hate sitting on the floor, you may know, or not. So as soon as some guests left and there was a seat, I got up and I sat in the seat. You sit down. So that was my first instruction from Srila Prabhupada. And of course I melted into the carpet, as one does, and very embarrassed and didn't know where to, what to do. And then at the end of the darshan, everyone was ushered out and I was leaving, and all the devotees were patting me on the back. Wow, you really got the mercy. And I said, what? These people are all crazy, because it didn't feel like mercy at the time. But anyway, as we understand, getting, as Mataji mentioned, getting chastised by Prabhupada was indeed a blessing. Hare Krishna. That's the only one, that's it.
So many stories about Prabhupada, and it's all a nectar, to hear whatever Prabhupada did, whatever Prabhupada said. It's all wonderful. All the activities, of a pure devotee of Prabhupada is wonderful from beginning to end, because it's all connected with Krishna. Prabhupada, he never did anything or said anything that wasn't in relationship to Krishna. And a pure devotee, he's experienced not by looking, but by hearing. When we hear from a pure Vaishnava, there's a verse in the Gita, Tadvidi paripatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshati te jnanam jnaninas tattva darshanaha. So we get tattva darshan, we get realization from hearing the words of the pure Vaishnava. And those words become potent by service. Pariprashnena sevaya, by genuine inquiry and service. So to really understand Prabhupada, who he really is, we need to hear from him. And Prabhupada has left all these books, so many books. So now, Prabhupada is accessible to everyone all over the world. Because by reading Prabhupada's books, we can understand who he really is. Otherwise, if we're not hearing from Prabhupada, how can we understand who he really is? So many pastimes Prabhupada had, as we're hearing, but when we hear from Prabhupada, because we understand who he is, then all these pastimes of Prabhupada, they have meaning. They have spiritual meaning. So Prabhupada had all the good qualities of a devotee. Like I was explaining before, when Prabhupada got a little upset with that lawyer, and he was quoting how non-devotees have no good qualities and devotees have all good qualities. So Prabhupada displays good qualities continuously. Like compassion is one of the main qualities of a devotee. So one time, when Prabhupada came to Melbourne, we hired a Rolls Royce. And so So when Prabhupada came out of the airport, he was interviewed by some journalists. And so they asked Prabhupada, "Oh, why? You know, you were a renounced person, you were a saint, but you're riding in Rolls Royce like a materialist." And so Prabhupada said that, first of all, he said that out of love and respect and appreciation of my disciples, they have hired this Rolls Royce for me because they feel that the spiritual master is a representative of God. And so therefore God should have the best of everything. So therefore the spiritual master should have the best of everything. And I mean, Prabhupada wasn't attached in this world. I mean, if we read in Bhagavatam, the mood and the attitude of pure Vaishnavas to this world, it has no value for them at all. Not even, where is it? There's the amount of water contained in a hoof print. It's insignificant. So for Prabhupada, you know, he had no attachment in this world to enjoy, to control. So, and this is a symptom of Prabhupada's humility. When Prabhupada came to Sydney, when I was there, then that evening Prabhupada came out to be with us. Because as Naresvara explained, you know, for a normal devotee, it's almost impossible to get to Prabhupada. That's another topic. But anyway, so Prabhupada would, you know, every now and then Prabhupada would just come out and to be with his disciples. So this night Prabhupada came out and we just finished Prasadam because we had Aratik. And then after Aratik, there's class, and then after class, Prasadam. And so we just finished Prasadam, and Prabhupada came out the back where we were in the garden there. And so what struck me the most was Prabhupada's humility. I mean, Prabhupada was a big guru. He was in charge of so many temples around the world. He was a very big man, even from a material estimation. But the humility that Prabhupada had when he came out to see us, it was like he was our friend, our well-wisher, our parent, our everything. Not a big man coming out and, you know, looking down saying, yeah, you should worship me. No. And that just melted my heart, you know. And if I had any doubts before that, they were all gone at that time. And, you know, and also the love that he had for us, we can't estimate, we can't imagine even. Dhruva Maharaj, when he became so upset because he couldn't sit on his father's lap, then his mother, what's his mother's name? Anyway, maybe Dhruva Maharaj. Anyway, so his mother said to him, Suniti, yes. So Suniti said to Prahlad Maharaj, you should go to the forest to Vishnu because he loves you more than millions of mothers like me. So we had that experience when we met Prabhupada, that Prabhupada loved us so much. Our hearts just melted. And we were ready, willing and able to just surrender and give everything to Prabhupada. And you look at the history of so many Prabhupada's disciples, they just, you know, we were from 4 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. We were totally 100% absorbed in Prabhupada's service in the temple, going Sankirtan. I was a pujari for 16 years, so most of my time was in the kitchen in the Devi room, cooking and doing puja, which I love so much. And so many Prabhupada disciples just dropped everything. We didn't have a separate life, you know, like, you know, we gave up our jobs, our families, our everything, and just joined the temple and served Prabhupada exclusively. One of my god sisters, Krishna Premi, I mean, Prabhupada just sent her to Sweden to preach in different countries, just to preach open temples and you know, and serving Prabhupada like that. So we were all like that. We didn't have a separate life. We had no other agenda. We had no other goal or no other ambition. Just serving Prabhupada 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So, and Prabhupada was so, what do you call it? Prabhupada is so appreciative of his disciples' love and service. Just like parents, they will put up with so much hardship for their children. There's nothing they won't do for their children's welfare. So because of the love that Prabhupada had for us, we loved him so much that we just dropped everything, and we underwent so much austerity. You know, I mean, I came from a middle-class family, so you know, I had a really nice room, I had a nice bed, and you know, all facilities. And all of a sudden, I'm sleeping on the floor. You know, I'm getting up 4 o'clock in the morning. You know, and I'm not choosing any menu for lunch or dinner or breakfast. You know, whatever comes. So we were able to do that because of it was out of love that we could do that. And yeah. So, and Prabhupada was so compassionate. There was in when it was 1976, I think, 77, when I was in Vrindavan, one Spanish sculptor who was Prabhupada's disciple, he showed me these deities of Gaudettai, and they were so beautiful. They're the most beautiful deities I've ever seen. And I was looking at them and I was saying, what? And he said, yeah, Prabhupada designed these deities. He said, you know, I'm the sculptor and I did everything, but Prabhupada, he's the one that gave direction. You should carve like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's face should be square, Nityananda's face should be oval shaped like that. So they were the exact replica of what Nityananda and Gauranga looked like. I still have those deities. But he needed money, so he said, look, you know, I really need money. I'll sell you these deities. And they were the first deities that were made. And so I just grabbed them. I didn't care what he asked for. I didn't tell him that. But so anyway, he told me the story that Prabhupada wanted these deities to be put in every department store. And you know, in the good old days, in the 70s, people would have wood fires. So they would have a mantelpiece on top of the wood fireplace, and they would put pretty beautiful things there. So Prabhupada wanted these to be sold in that area of the department store where they would buy things to put on their mantelpiece. So Prabhupada said, he said, if people bought these deities, put them on the mantelpiece, and said, oh, they look beautiful. If anyone came into their home and said, oh, that looks so beautiful, then Prabhupada said they're developing Sukriti. You know, so Prabhupada was constantly thinking of how to uplift humanity, even to such fine detail. So Prabhupada was always thinking of the welfare of humanity. So this is compassion. Another time, this was in the Rolls Royce. And so they were driving Prabhupada, the Rolls Royce had a driver. So there was 3 devotees there, one in the front and one on each side of Prabhupada in the back. It was Madhvisa, Chidahari and Amoga. Yeah. And so Amoga, he was saying, I guess I shouldn't mention names anyway. He was pointing to the people on the street, walking along the sidewalk, and he was saying to Prabhupada, oh look, they're so sinful, they're all going to hell. They're such bad people. And so Chidahari was in the car, he told me the story, he saw it personally. So he looked at Prabhupada and there was tears coming from Prabhupada's eyes. And Prabhupada said, yes, but how can we save them? So Prabhupada was always thinking of the welfare of humanity and especially of his disciples. I often tell this story, so I don't know, maybe some of you have heard this story before, but I'll tell it anyway, because it's an amazing story. So I was reading in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Prabhupada was in Melbourne. I spent a lot of time in Melbourne. So I was a pujari there. So I was reading in Chaitanya Charitamrita that wherever Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went, and it wasn't actually Chaitanya Charitamrita, it was an article somewhere. But anyway, wherever Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went, wherever his feet touched the ground, then there was huge holes where people would take the dust from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's feet. So I thought, okay, Prabhupada was there, so I thought, okay, tomorrow morning in morning walk, I would take a big handful of dust from Prabhupada's feet, and I will keep this for the rest of my life. So then, on the morning walk, we were doing morning walk just next to the city. It was like beautiful gardens there, and so it had been raining a little bit the night before, so the ground, it wasn't dry. It was just slightly moist. It was soft. And I was looking at the ground and saying, oh, I can get a really big handful, you know. Because I was thinking, when I got there, when I actually got there on the morning walk, I was thinking, oh no, I should have bought like a little shovel or something. But then when I saw the soft ground, I thought, no problem, I can do it. So then I got behind Prabhupada. Madhvisa was on one side and on the right, on Prabhupada's right, and Deepak, the temple president, he was on the left. Madhvisa was the GBC at the time. And so I got right next to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada's foot came up, and I went down to grab a handful, but there's no imprint. There's no imprint. And I was thinking, what? And so then, okay, next step. I was this far away from Prabhupada's feet, my face. And I was looking. And as Prabhupada's foot came up, there's no imprint. 3 times. And I was thinking, oh. So I became so confused, I just forgot about grabbing a handful. And I was thinking, what's the point in grabbing a handful? Prabhupada hasn't touched the ground. So then, I think it was Yamuna. She also wrote in one Guru Puja book in the 70s. She also had a similar experience when she was on a morning walk with Prabhupada in long grass. she couldn't see the imprint of Prabhupada's feet in the long grass. But she could see all the other devotees' foot imprint. You know, long grass, it goes down, and then...
Tittenhurst, right?
Huh?
At Tittenhurst, at John Lennon's...
Was that where it was it? What?
Tittenhurst.
Tittenhurst, yeah.
John
in
Lennon's,
London, in England, yeah.
John Lennon's estate.
John Lennon's estate. Thanks for that. So, yeah, and so Harisori also told me that when he would massage Prabhupada's feet, it was like baby skin. And Shrutakirti also, he said a similar thing. So Prabhupada's feet never actually touched the ground. Just like Yudhishthira Maharaj, he never touched the ground. But, you know, the real magic of Prabhupada was he was able to turn hippies into happies. Really. One thing I should say about Prabhupada
Racitambara,
You pass it
what
on.
is the story about
Sahadeva.
Prabhupada's feet not touching the ground? You said you know.
You want to pass the mic around.
Racitambara Mataji knows the story about not touching the ground. Cooking story.
Cooking story?
Oh, cooking story. Oh.
Any particular cooking story? Oh, cookies. Yeah, I was going to get into cookies. Okay, still in LA. All right, still in LA, and I used to do the 4 o'clock offering every day, which means cutting up fruit, making a fruit, plate with cookies and that sort of thing. So I would do that each day. And one time, Srila Prabhupada, what we used to do was we would cut the grapes in half and take the seeds out, because he didn't want Krishna to have to deal with that. So then Prabhupada asked for the 4 o'clock offering one day, and so it went up to him, and he sent his servant down to find the cook. He said, tell her that sometimes Krishna likes to suck on the seeds. So there's a personal instruction. Krishna sometimes likes to suck on the seeds. Anyway, yes, okay, so many things to say, but yes, cookies. Well, you might have seen sometimes the videos of Srila Prabhupada giving cookies to the children. That was so important to him. All the children would come, and when Prabhupada would come to LA, the devotees from all the different temples around, they'd come from Denver, they'd come from so many places, so there was lots and lots of children there. And after the morning Bhagavatam class, Prabhupada would give out the cookies. I used to make those cookies. I was so fortunate. I was so fortunate. That was my service. I did it every time Prabhupada came. We only had one recipe. They were called Prabhupada cookies, because Prabhupada gave us the recipe. It was butter, sugar, and flour. That was it. So I would always make those, and I would cut them, and like you roll them out and you cut them in a flower shape or something with cookie cutters. So one day I thought, oh, I need to get some different cookie cutters. I only have this one, flowery one. So I took my little daughter and off we went to some big shop, and we looked and looked in the cookie cutter section, and finally we found one. It was in the shape of a cow. I thought, this is wonderful. Prabhupada's going to love this. It's going to remind him of the cows in Vrindavan. So I brought this, and I didn't even want to wait for the morning. I came home, I made a batch of cookies, and I decorated their little hooves, and I made a little blanket on their back with icing, and they look so beautiful. And I made a nice plate, and I brought them over. I think Palika was there. I gave them to Palika and asked her, can you bring these into Srila Prabhupada? She said yes. She came back out about a minute later, and she said, Prabhupada said, they think I will eat the cow? Threw the cookie cutter away. That was that story. So the first time I took, my daughter doesn't want me to tell her stories. Never, that was partly mine. Okay, so the first time I took my daughter up to get a cookie, she was still a baby in my arms. So she was too little to know to put her hand out to get the cookie. So I put her hand in mine, and then Prabhupada, he put the cookie in and he put his hand around both our hands and he gave it a good squeeze. That was really nice. Anyway, this was very important to me, this service, as a personal service to Prabhupada. And I was always very impressed about how much Srila Prabhupada loved the children. Here I am, 72, I'm still teaching children because Prabhupada inspired me like that. Anyway, so one time we were all called, it was a big temple, lots of devotees, we were all called to the temple for an Istigosti in the evening. Okay, so everybody came, and our, I won't mention the name because I promised not to, but our GBC, he told us, Srila Prabhupada is very ill. He's in Hawaii. He's very ill. He's too ill to stay there. The weather, the climate is not, working for him, and he's coming tonight. He's arriving tonight in LA. Nobody will go to the airport to meet him, just one car and we'll pick him up. And in the morning, everyone should be very, very quiet, coming for Mangalarti and coming for Guru Puja and everything. Very, very quiet. Don't anybody try to see him. Don't anybody try for darshan. Prabhupada's going to be sick in his room. He really made a big deal about it. Nobody try and see him. So then he asked at the end, are there any questions? So I raised my hand and he said, yes. And I said, what about the cookies? Should I make the cookies? In front of 200 devotees, he went, stupid woman. Did you hear her? She said, I just told everybody how sick Prabhupada is, and she wants to know if Prabhupada's going to give cookies to the children. I just wanted to be like Sita and have the earth open and I would just sink into it. I was devastated. I came home and I cried and I cried and I cried. And my husband said, service is absolute. This is your service to Srila Prabhupada. Whether he gives the cookies out or not is different. The service is to make the cookies and bring them. You do that. So in the morning I did that. After Mangalarti, I made the cookies, I arranged them on the big silver tray, I brought them over and put them behind the Vyasasan like I always did. I thought, okay, I've done my service. I was a little peaceful. And then we were all waiting to greet the deities, and the door to Srila Prabhupada's room opened, the door to where he came out from his rooms opened into the temple room. Prabhupada was like, he was hanging off of two men. They were, it was Karandar and I can't remember the other one. They were carrying him, pretty much carrying, like dragging him into the temple, but he had insisted, because they'd arrived in the night, he'd insisted on seeing the deities. So they laid him down in front of Gauri Thai and got him up again, brought him over, laid him down in front of Rukmini Dwarkadish, pulled him up again, laid him down in front of Jagannath, and then he went to take him out again. Prabhupada said, a very small voice, he said, no, we must have Guru Puja. So they took him up and they somehow got him up on his Vyasasan, and we sang a very short, quiet Guru Puja. And then they climbed up on the Vyasasan to get him down, and Prabhupada said, no, there must be class. Very important to have class every day. So Prabhupada gave the class. He was all bent over. He was so quiet, even speaking into a microphone. You had to strain to hear him. And he gave a very short class, and they went to get him down again, and he said, no, where are the cookies? The children are waiting for their cookies. I'm like, I have the cookies! Ran around, got them. And Prabhupada's so sick, so weak, he gave out cookies to every last child there. And then he crumpled up the rest and he threw them out into, by now, the ecstatically dancing brahmacharis. So Prabhupada just loved the children. There was so many stories like that. One time, there was a couple with a small child that just was barely walking, and they went to take darshan with Prabhupada in his room in LA. And the little child started to toddle around, and then he went over by Prabhupada's desk and he went to pull on Prabhupada's book. And Prabhupada said, no, no. So the mother grabbed him and brought him back. And again, the little child went a few minutes later and then took Prabhupada's pen. Prabhupada said, no, no. And they brought him back. And then the child walked around and stuffed his feet into Prabhupada's slippers. And the mother flipped at that one. No! Prabhupada said to her, no. He said, the child cannot read, so he shouldn't take my book. The child cannot write yet. He shouldn't take the pen. But the child can walk. He can wear my slippers. He was always very practical. Prabhupada was very practical. Anyway, so so many stories. Okay, I'll move on from LA if I may. Prabhupada, oh, okay, you wanted the walking story. Okay. So we were really settled in LA, my husband and myself and my small daughter. And I was loving being there, loving being a pujari. And one day, my husband said, oh, I've been called to Prabhupada's room. Okay, go, go, go. So off he went, and he came back, and what happened in there was Prabhupada told him, my husband was an engineer, a builder, that sort of guy, you know? And so Prabhupada was so excited like a small child with a new toy. He was just like that. And he told my husband that we've just bought a new building in New York City. Prabhupada started out in a small storefront, and suddenly they got a 13-story building. Prabhupada said, I always wanted a big building in New York. He was so excited. He said, but here's the problem. It's an old nursing home, very badly in repair. It needs all new wiring. It needs all new plumbing. The whole kitchen needs to be taken out because it was me to make that new. Prabhupada's quarters on the top, offices put in, you know, the whole huge building. It was a tall building and a wide building. And so he asked my husband, how long would that take to, you know, really get it ready? And my husband was calculating, and then he just was opening his mouth to say, about a year, Srila Prabhupada, to do a really good job. Just before he could get that out, Prabhupada said, I'm scheduled to arrive in New York in 6 weeks. My husband came home, he said, pack. We're on the first plane to New York in the morning. I never saw LA again, that was that. So somehow or other, in 6 weeks, we did it. Somehow or other, even my small daughter we had her painting the baseboards. She was 3. Anyway, everybody just pitched in. I don't remember sleeping in 6 weeks. I guess we did, but you know, it was just work, work, work the whole time. And then Prabhupada was arriving. He went to the airport. Everybody was lining the walk when Prabhupada would come up. He drove up. He got out of the car and he just stood on the pavement looking at his first big building. He was so happy, and he just floated. He just floated down. He was starting to move towards the building. He never took his eyes off of it. He was just walking. But I was looking at his lotus feet. He was not walking. He was above the ground. Totally right. He was just floating along there. He was so happy. And I looked over at my husband, who looked, you know, he was so worried because everybody had gifts. Everybody was piling gifts into Srila Prabhupada's arms, and then his servant was taking them out. They knitted scarves, they had flowers, they had all kinds of gifts, and my husband had nothing. He had a whole temple, but he had nothing, he felt, to give. So he ran back inside, and he found all the flowers had been used because we decorated the deities and Prabhupada's rooms and everywhere. And there was one broken rose like this. It was all black around the edges. No one had used it. So he got that, and he came back, and I saw it. And then I saw my husband put it behind his back, like, you don't give that to Prabhupada. Prabhupada was moving so slowly, just floating along, and looking always at the building. And then he got up to where my husband was, and he just stopped. Still looking at the building, but he just stopped. And everyone's like, what's going on? Then he put his hand out. And my husband didn't know what to do. You can't give that old thing. And then Prabhupada went, like, give it to me, you know? So then he gave him this old rose, put it in Prabhupada's hand, and Prabhupada folded his two hands over the rose, and then he turned to him and he said, thank you very much. So it's always worth all the work and the effort. And anyway, that was really nice. So we were there for a while, and then Prabhupada sent us to do some things at Bhaktivedanta Manor. We arrived at the manor, and Prabhupada was coming there. So there was no place to stay because everybody had already got there, so we stayed in the hay barn. You know, as a devotee, you just do whatever. And then Prabhupada sent us off to Bombay after we'd finished our service there. And we'd never been to India. And when our first day, the first thing I saw was a woman, it was Ambika actually, she had a bunch of rice on a tray in front of her and she was picking things out of it. I said, what are you doing? She said, I'm picking out the rocks and the bugs out of the rice. I said, what? You know, in the West, you just buy a nice bag of rice and it's good to go. And then the first service I was given was to make burfi for the deities. I was thrilled. They gave me this huge pot of milk, and I spent all day cooking it down. Then they told me, oh, that's because you get like this much burfi at the end because all the rest is water. It has to boil off first. Anyway, that was Welcome to India. And I can't tell any of her stories. Okay. Anyway, one story I would really like to share with you, which is kind of really special thing, is I was in Bhagavatam class. This was when they still had the old temple. We were there because my husband was helping to build the new temple. And it was very small. And we'd cuddle up in front of Prabhupada, the boys on one side, the girls on the other, but we were all close. Now Prabhupada gave his lecture, Bhagavatam class, and then he said, when you all leave your bodies, I will personally be there to greet each one of you. And it's not finished yet. And I will take each one and personally introduce you to Krishna. Everybody. I remember that Prabhupada said personally twice. I'm waiting for that. He said personally twice. That was really... And then, on the other side was the men, and there were Tamal Krishna Maharaj was sitting there, and he looked over at Tamal Krishna Maharaj and he said that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is waiting for you. And where did he leave? Just in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's area. Interesting, huh? Anyway, so somehow or other, I didn't know, but in Canada, when you say bye-bye to someone, you go bye-bye, you know, especially to a child, bye-bye. But I didn't know that in India it means come, come, come. So there was all these little construction children, because, you know, we were building a temple. There was all these children roaming around, very messy, whatever, and they were interested in my daughter because she was little. And at the end of the day, I would go, bye-bye, bye-bye, and they would all come. So we ended up, anyway, we had 2 rooms in the guest house. My husband took 7 or 8 of them, and I took the rest. And I took the girls, he took the boys, and we started a small school. Because we couldn't get rid of them anyway. So anyway, so we started a little school there. We cleaned them all up, got the bugs out of their hair, got them in saris and dhotis. And they were very excited to be devotees, very excited to clean the deities' brass and silver. Tulsi, they looked after all the Tulsis. We would try and teach them, you know, writing in the sand and juhu, different things. And most people liked them around because we got them all cleaned up, and they were very sweet and very devotional, loved to come to RT. But one person was not a big person, sannyasi, told me, when Prabhupada comes, I'm going to make sure he gets them all out. And so I thought, oh my gosh, I got to somehow get them some mercy. So then Prabhupada came, sure enough. He came twice while we were there. So Prabhupada came, and then was when we were taking him up to his new quarters. So I got all the children kind of behind me, and then everybody probably went up in the elevator, and I got all the children. We ran up the stairs, and I kept them at the back of the room, and beside me, we were all there looking at Prabhupada, and then they bathed Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet, and the children saw that. It was so nice. And then they were bathing his feet, and then they had to move the bowl because they had to dry his feet, and the bowl got passed to somebody and somebody else and somebody else, and it came to my hands. I'm like, hey kids, come here. And so I just like a mother feeding their little baby ducks or something, open your mouth, and I just poured the Charnamrita from Prabhupada's lotus feet into everybody's mouth, one after another. They all took the mercy directly from Srila Prabhupada's feet. I had some, my daughter had some, and we finished the whole bowl. Afterwards, they're saying, hey, where's the bowl of Charnamrita? We don't know. I never told. Anyway, so those children, I still keep in touch with some of them. And those children, either they are devotees in ISKCON, still to this day, serving and, or they're big businessmen. They all did well in life somehow. They were the construction workers' kids. They all did well. They're big businessmen. They come regularly to the temple. They give big donations to the temple because they got Prabhupada's mercy. Isn't that a nice story? So, okay, I better let the boys talk. I got more. Go ahead. Sorry, I could talk all night. Sorry.
All good. So, where were we?
You were
in Washington.
Washington.
In Washington, that's right. From Washington, Prabhupada made a quick one-day trip, just a drive really, to give class to Baltimore. And so we got to hear his class in Baltimore from outside the window because it was so small. And then we went up to New York, and Prabhupada was coming there for Rath Yatra. Fifth Avenue is the first Rath Yatra, I believe, on Fifth Avenue in New York. And again, as I mentioned, like all the big guns of the movement were there, at least the ones in America, and lots of devotees, tons of devotees, probably all from all over the country, maybe even from Canada, I don't know, but it was big.
Yeah, Montreal.
Yeah, Montreal would have been there. So we didn't really get I didn't get any association with Prabhupada really there. Bhakta Norman was not really high on the totem pole. But I remember one time they were showing Srila Prabhupada around the kitchen, and I was one of the kitchen hands. And so I was there. And they're showing Prabhupada around the kitchen, look, we got these new stoves, and we got this, and then they showed Prabhupada this thing, like a tall kind of cabinet, looked like a cabinet. And Prabhupada said, what's this? And they said, oh, Prabhupada, that's a steamer. We can steam things to heat them up. We put the rice in there to heat it up. And Prabhupada said, no, you don't heat rice. You cannot reheat rice. You cannot reheat rice. It becomes poisonous. So that was a good instruction that we heard. And I can't really think of any other interaction with Srila Prabhupada except, we see him in the class and sitting on the Rath Yatra cart. Yeah. So anyway, I ended up staying in New York. But I was leaving. I was on my way to India. I had asked one sannyasi, Rupanuga Prabhu in Washington, what do you think I should do? What's the best thing for me to do? I'm new. He said, "I'll go to India. You can get good training over there." So that was my idea. I would go to India. In New York, during that Rath Yatra, I was assisting Bali Madan in serving the sannyasis. He was responsible to serve the sannyasis, and I was assisting him. So after the festival, I told him, "Well, I'm going to be leaving now." "Oh, tomorrow Krishna wants to see you." So I went up to see him after lunch, I think it was, and he was kind of. Anyway, he told me, "No, you should stay here and get trained up here. This is the best place for you to get trained up." And he was nodding out, actually, as I recall. He just had his lunch. But anyway, he said, "You should stay here." And I still had time on my ticket. So I stayed there. And then, when I wanted to leave, they wouldn't let me go. They wouldn't let me go. They said, no, you can't go. I said, "I'm going to India now. My ticket's running out." No, you can't go. So I ran away in the middle of the night with Madhavananda Prabhu. He was on his way to India via London. I had a ticket to London. We went. In the middle of the night, I went. And so with Madhavananda, we arrived in India and we went straight to see Prabhupada at the Kumbh Mela. That was one of the big Kumbh Melas, 1977. One of the major, once in 64 years or whatever it is. Huh? 144 years, okay. So we went there, and of course he was a senior devotee, so he got in, but I didn't get to see Prabhupada except for, again, classes and that, but he was there and he was giving class and doing his thing. And then I went to Mayapur, and I went with the Nam Hatha team, Guru Kripa Maharaj. They had their own bus, and we went to Mayapur. Prabhupada went to Bhubaneswara first, and then he came to Mayapur. But anyway, it was like everyone was coming to Mayapur for the festival, and Nam Hatha wanted me to join their group, their team. And then Tamal and Adikeshwar arrived, and it was like a bit embarrassing because I'd ran away in the middle of the night. But I always fall into these situations where I was in charge of the Mahaprasad again. In New York, I was in charge of the Mahaprasad. I became the guest house manager 3 days after I arrived in Mayapur. I told Bhavananda, what can I do? I want to do some service now. I've been here 3 days. He said, "Yeah, what can you do?" He said, "You used to be the the guest house manager in New York, right?" I said, "Yeah, 3 rooms or whatever it was." And so he said, "Okay, you can be the guest house manager here." And so when Prabhupada arrived, I was the guest house manager, which meant that I was in the building with Srila Prabhupada and I was making all the arrangements. So again, you can't get into Prabhupada's presence. There's all the sannyasis there. It was a festival time coming up. But, I was helping, what's her name? Rupi, Shruti Rupa. We used to call her Rupi. Shruti Rupa, right? Shruti Rupa? Yeah. She was cooking for Prabhupada, and I don't even remember this, but she told me I used to help her. I used to get her everything she needed for cooking. And then we used to carry Srila Prabhupada. He was sick. He wasn't well. And so we would carry him up to the roof room. He had a room on the roof, and we would carry him up in a chair. So I was involved in all that kind of assistance service to Srila Prabhupada. And then one day, Srila Prabhupada wants to see you. Jayapataka Maharaj came, and he was it wasn't looking good. Let's put it like that. So before that, Subhag Maharaj, then Subhag Prabhu, wasn't sannyasi. I don't think it was a sannyasi. I can't remember. Anyway, he came to me and he said, where's that file of letters? So there was this file of letters, a big, thick file of letters, just in Bengali, in English. And, I came from the West, I was like pretty efficient. So I got all the letters, I got a book, a big book, and I took down all the addresses, I took down all the contact details, and then I threw away the letters. And then Subha came the next day. Where's that file of letters? Srila Prabhupada wants to see them. So I ran down to the kitchen, the big kitchen. I don't know, nowadays you don't really see much of it, but the big kitchen is that building where the brahmacharis stay now. And behind that, there was a walled area, maybe at the size of, half of the size of this room, with a wall about this high, where all the rubbish was thrown. And that's where I'd thrown it. So I went running down there, and I started rummaging through the rubbish looking for the letters. But you know what it's like. The people come and they take all the paper, they sell it. It was gone. There was nothing left. So I went back and I said, hey, I threw them out. But I've got all the contact details, What do you need the letters for? I got the contact details here. Prabhupada wants to see the letters. So he'd been talking to Prabhupada, telling him, people are writing, they're appreciating your Bhagavad Darshan, your magazine. And Prabhupada said, let me see. So then I got the call. So I was there was Jayapataka and Bhavananda, okay? So I was like, Jayapataka Maharaj was, anyway, I was Bhavananda's guy, Bhavananda's the one who put me in charge, and I was his guy. But Prabhupada told Jayapataka to bring me. So we went in the room, you know Prabhupada's room, the same room. He was sitting in his seat. Jayapataka was sitting on the white mattress there, and I was sitting on the floor in front of Prabhupada. And he was blasting me, but I can't remember what he was saying too much. But, Bhavananda was hiding outside on the veranda listening in, right? And Jayapataka Maharaj, he was taking it. How did you put this man in charge? He didn't say, no, it wasn't me, Prabhupada. He just took it. And Prabhupada, and I was kind of sitting there like this. Look, he's crazy. Look at it. Look at it. Look at his eyes. He's crazy. And you put him in charge of the guest house? And Jayapataka was just taking it all. So that was my second. That was my second personal one-to-one, one-on-one interaction with His Divine Grace. I had some others, but we'll save them. Stop.
This is good.
So anyway, like I said, I was the guest house manager, and there was two ladies who used to cook in that big kitchen. And they used to cook for the devotees. And Jayapataka Maharaj would ask, they wanted to cook for Srila Prabhupada. But Prabhupada didn't usually have anyone cook for him. You know, he had his cook. So Jayapataka Maharaj would ask, you know, these ladies, they want to cook for you, they want to cook for you. Finally, Prabhupada said, okay, let them cook. So again, you have to remember, Prabhupada had his team, right? There was the secretary, there was the servant, there was the cook, there were other sannyasis. They were all staying in, there's Prabhupada's room, his bedroom, his sitting room, then there's 2 more rooms. And they were in those 2 rooms, all the big guns. So anyway, around 12 o'clock, I think it was, something around midday, Shama Sundarananda Prabhu, who is a Bengali devotee who was in charge of the kitchen, he comes walking up the stairs with one of those big wooden round boards, I don't know what you call them, but they use for in the kitchen. What are they called?
Sort of like
The round platters, you know, big, full wood platters. I have one at home which is this big, but he had ones this big. They would use them for cut up and cutting up cheese, whatever. He walks up the stairs with one of those on his head, covered in banana leaves. So he's coming up the stairs. I'm there, I'm in charge of the guest house. And he said, this is for Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada was up on the roof. So I go looking for the servant, no one around. Let's go. So we went up together. I knocked on the door, he said, come, opened the door, and then we went in, and Prabhupada was sitting, the door's here, you walk in, Prabhupada's sitting on his seat over there, table in front. Well, I don't know what he was doing, but anyway, we walked in, and then together we lifted it off his head and took the leaves off and said, Srila Prabhupada, here's your lunch, cooked by the 2 ladies at the kitchen. And I don't know if you've seen, probably you haven't, you've seen pictures, no doubt. These Prabhus have probably seen that big-eyed smile of Srila Prabhupada's. And that was what we got. It was the big-eyed smile. And he's looking. And then we were just holding it. We didn't put it on the table, we were holding it. The table's here, Prabhupada's there, we were holding it here. So Prabhupada's looking, and then he starts taking. There was like, I don't know, 50, 100 cups, I don't know, the little clay cups. There was, the plate was just covered in the cups. And Prabhupada started taking. He was taking a mouthful of this, a mouthful of that. I can't remember, but he's just like tasting different preparations. And then he gave us the nod.
Oh, yeah.
They gave us the nod, which meant, you know, and so then we left. And then we started going down the stairs and we're thinking, wow, this is the... But then all the servants showed up, the sannyasis, and so it went. And we didn't, you know, get it. But Srila Prabhupada told Jayapataka that those 2 ladies were the best cooks in ISKCON at that time. Kishori Balava and Suchi Rani.
Wow.
Two Bengali ladies. I think Suchi Rani left, huh?
Yes, she left.
She left her body. And Kishori, I don't know where she is. She was in LA cooking, but I don't know where she is now. Anyway, that was well, I should tell you that the day after I got blasted by him, I bumped into him on the veranda. Srila Prabhupada. I bumped into Srila Prabhupada on the veranda, paid full dandavats, and he stood there, accepted my obeisances, and then gave me the nod. So, Hare Krishna.
There you go.
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt
LA, Prabhupada came and he was looking at the Dwarkadish, and he said, who was dressed as deities? And who were the two ladies? Prabhupada came in to take darshan, and he, it was just beautiful dressing.
Manjwali.
And he wanted to know who dressed these two ladies. So can you tell me who those?
So that was Manjwali, and I can't remember who the other one was, but then they were told to come up to Srila Prabhupada's room, and he expressed again how beautifully he liked the outfit, how beautifully they dressed, and he gave Manjwali $20. And he said, this is for a new outfit. Anyone who's ever made deity outfits, thank you, Srila Prabhupada, I'll make a new outfit. But you've sparked me an idea that if you've ever seen old pictures of Rukmini Dwarkadish, they have, Rukmini has very long hair, beautiful hair down to her knees. And that was my service before I was a pujari, like before I was Brahman on the altar. They would take all the hair off in big, beautiful silver trays, so opulent there. And they would bring them out to me, and I would comb their hair every morning. And I would spend a long time, making beautiful curls for Krishna and Gaurnitai, but especially Radharani. I would make beautiful long ringlets all down the front. And then we would they would put them on, their hair on, and just Radharani was just full of these gorgeous ringlets. And so then Prabhupada was arriving, and I was so excited, and we worked so hard and made beautiful, beautiful hair for them all. And Prabhupada came in, he paid his obeisances, he looked at the deities, and then he turned around and he said, you dress the deities like hippies because you're all hippies. He said Radharani would never show her hair like that, just loosely wearing her hair. So Radharani's hair has to be always back. It's in one braid. She could sometimes wear one braid down the front, not two, just one. Usually her hair is in the back in a braid. Krishna's hair, we had these long, long, long wigs. Krishna's hair can go to his elbow. Gaurnitai's hair to their shoulders. That was it. So we had to cut everybody's hair. And then Gaurnitai should never be, you know how you pin the deities up with strings and whatever so that it looks like they're dancing and their skirts are flying, but never put Gaurnitai, don't attach them to each other. It gets in the way of their dancing. That's what he said.
Don't attach the...
Don't attach the chaudhars. Don't ever attach the chaudhars or the skirts, because then they're not free to dance, and Gaurnitai are dancers. So there's a thing for you. Okay, so that was deity worship. What time do we finish? Isn't it like...
Never.
Okay, we'll all go to Mangal Arati together. All right, well, so we were in Bombay, and then one day, my husband and let me tell you this first. Prabhupada was quite ill. This was his second visit, 77, early 77. He was quite ill, and so he was still in his quarters at the back of the property. So they would bring him in a car to the small temple room first. And then he would give class, and they'd take him back in the car. And then they would carry him, because his quarters were on the second floor, they would carry him upstairs on a palanquin. So my husband was always waiting at the other end with the front end of the palanquin. It was his service, and he was very happy with that. But every day, it was somebody different usually on the other side. And he would come home afterwards and he would tell us, sometimes, he said, today Prabhupada was very heavy. I could hardly lift him up. He's a big, strong guy, but he said I could hardly lift him up. And other days he'd come and he'd say, Prabhupada was so light, I don't understand. He would come every day and tell us his little experience of carrying Prabhupada up on the palanquin. And then it was the last day Prabhupada was going to be there for that visit. And he looked to make sure Prabhupada was sitting nicely on the palanquin. And he reached back because he had to turn forward to walk up the stairs. He went to lift him up and whew, he came right up. He thought, oh, I guess Prabhupada got off the palanquin. And he turned around and Prabhupada was sitting on the palanquin. He said he just looked like some little transcendental elf or something. And he said, he smiled and he said, I think I am very light today. Make of it what you will. Sometimes he was heavy, sometimes he was light, and he was joking like that. Anyway, should I go some more, or should I? How are we doing with time?
Well, we end at 6, and then we have some sweets here,
Okay.
which I would be grateful if the 4 of you would hand out.
Oh, that would be very nice.
So let's just keep talking until 6 o'clock.
Okay, I'll just say a few more things and you can talk. So, okay, so then my daughter and I went, and my husband, we went for a walk at Juhu Beach. Because the temple was just across the road, down the road from Juhu Beach, where the ocean, the Indian Ocean, just lapped in every day. So it was evening, we were finishing some rounds, walking along where the water comes, we were splashing our feet in the water, and we looked up and down, there was nobody on the beach. And suddenly somebody stopped my husband, he said, bus, I mean stop. And so he, didn't take his next step, and then the man reached down, local man, he reached down and he picked up out of this wet sand, right where he was about to put his foot, a Gopal deity. The most beautiful Gopal deity. Just incredible. He was like, I've never seen like that. He had a beautiful long braid. He had a little cowherd boy stick in one hand and a little laddu in the other. He had little kind of wings on his shoulders, a little bit of clothing. He was just beautiful, just very beautiful. And the man handed him to my husband. We all paid our obeisances because God had just appeared, and we stood up and the man was gone. It's a big, wide beach. I promise you, we looked up and down. He was not there. I don't know to this day. He just came, handed us the deity, and left. Anyway, so the next morning, I'm getting back to Prabhupada. So the next morning, so I took him home and I just bought a new pair of shoes and I made him a little bed in a shoebox for the night. We got him all cleaned up. And then the next morning I said, I have to go to the deity shopping area and get some clothes for him. He has no clothes, and he had a little deity house, and and my husband said, well, this is all the money we have. Take it, get whatever you can. So my daughter and I went to the deity shopping area, and we didn't have much money at all. And I saw this little, the little deity house you put the deity in, and it's got a little drawer at the bottom and a little roof on the top. And I wanted one of those so badly that he had a little altar. But it was either that or buy him some clothes and flute and a little toy to play with, silver ball or something. So we had to make the choice, and finally I said, okay, he needs dressing. We'll find some place for him to stay. So we came back that evening, and I told my husband I couldn't get the little altar for him. Anyway, then the next morning, my husband went down to the construction office to work, and there was a little deity altar, just like that, with a little drawer, everything, sitting in the middle of his desk. And my husband asked everybody around, like, whose is this? Somebody left this on my desk. They said, no, it was here when we walked in this morning. We all saw it was there. Krishna comes with his own paraphernalia. So then we had this Gopal deity, and then Prabhupada called us in, and he said, I want you to go to Gujarat. Gujarat, we didn't even have heard of it. We didn't know where that was, someplace in India. Anyway, he wants you to go to Gujarat. Someone has just donated a farm there, and I want you to go and start a temple there. I'm like, really? Anyway, so I can stop now and leave that for another time. Okay, no, okay. So all we were given was our train tickets. That's it. Remember, we had no money now because we'd spent it on Gopal. Anyway, off we went, and we got to Gujarat, and the temple devotees picked us up. We stayed one night in the temple, then they put us in a kind of a toto type of thing. And they went a long way off to someplace in the country, and there was a little tiny town, little village actually, and I thought, okay, our place is near. So I held up Gopal. I'd been carrying him with me. I held him up to say, look, this is where we're going to live now. But all the townspeople saw him and they said, Gopal, those white people, they've got Gopal. And they all started following. And they followed us out to the farm. And that's when we found out that in India, like in the south, they worship Sita Ram. Here we worship Gaurni Tai. Puri, they worship Jagannath. In Gujarat, everybody worships Gopal. So we got Gopal, and Prabhupada immediately sent us to Gujarat. So there we were at the farm, and we were very surprised. At this point, I have to tell you that my father was a film producer, and I grew up in a 15-room house. And here we were, Prabhupada sent us off to start a farm. There wasn't even a house. There was nothing. There was 2 old trees that the camels had eaten all the leaves off of, and that was it. And there was an old well that worked. We could get water. So there we were with no money, living under 2 trees with no leaves. It was the hottest time of the year, and I had a small daughter, and we had Gopal. So we put him in his little house, and the people came, and we just started Prabhupada's program. What do you do, you know? So we had Mangal Arati every morning. A couple of people came, but we had it. And then we have Guru Puja and Bhagavatam class, and quite a few people came for that. And it turned out that one of the locals somehow or other had learned English along the way. So he translated. And then in the evening we would have Sundar Arati, and this boy would come again. He's a wonderful devotee today. He got initiated, whatever. But he would translate again. We'd have a Bhagavad Gita class every night. And we just went on like that with Prabhupada's program. It was so nice. And the seasons changed, and we had to work the farm. We borrowed somehow, we didn't speak the language, but we borrowed a bullock and a plow, and we plowed the land. And my husband went with the plow, and my daughter and I would go and drop seeds in the ground along the, behind. Anyway, there we were. It was not my thing, but you just do whatever Prabhupada wanted. You go start a farm, you go start a temple, okay. So there we were, and then one day I noticed, Prabhu, look way over there, there's some really dark clouds coming up on the side. And he said, no, don't worry. And there was like heavy, heavy winds we'd had. In India, there's the hot season, then you get that heavy wind, and then you know what comes next. Anyway, so then all day while we were working the farm, I was looking, and the clouds were getting bigger and bigger and coming closer, and I kept saying, Prabhu, what do we do? It kind of looks like it might rain. No, don't worry. And finally, when it was time to go to bed for the night, which was on the ground, I said, Prabhu, we have a small daughter, and we have the deity, and what should we do? And he said, there's a little piece of an old building that used to be there. It's about this high and not much longer than this table, just that little bit that was left. He said, we'll go behind that. The wind is so strong that if we're just behind there, it'll just blow past us, even if it rains. I said, okay, that's good. So we had a little old harmonium, and we were there, and we all kind of curled up for the night in that little tiny space, and then suddenly, for the first time in a solid month, the wind stopped dead. The heavens opened, and it poured, our first monsoon. It poured and poured. I didn't know there was rain like that. It just rained and rained and rained and rained so heavily, and I said, Prabhu, what should we do? He said, get out the harmonium, we'll chant Hare Krishna. So we just sat in our first monsoon chanting Hare Krishna all night. But then, I'm going to shorten this story. So then, the way we ate actually was we would go to the town, the little village every day, and we would play our little cartels and sing Hare Krishna, and they would give us, people would give us a few paisa or a little bit of rice and, some loki or something. And so now we couldn't go because water, we found out we were in a little high area, but all around us was water. And so we would walk through like this deep in water to get to the temple, to the village. And somehow or other, we were eating every day. Krishna never let us go hungry, not once, because we were working for Prabhupada. Not once. Every day we had enough to eat, only enough. We never had any to share. We just barely had enough. And so we were still living under this tree in the rain. And then the local man, Mr. R.B. Desai, the local big man there, he owned a big cornstarch factory. And so he heard that there were some white people living under a tree worshiping a deity. He had gone to college in Washington, actually, and he knew that that's not how things worked over there. So he sent some men on tractors, and we told them about Srila Prabhupada. So then he came the next day on a tractor, and we gave him Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, and we told him about the movement and everything. And then the tractors started coming, and he came. They came one after another with all the, articles needed for building, and he built a temple. He built a temple. There was a kitchen. There was a temple room. There was room for us to stay in. There was another room, a go-down. It's the first time we heard that word. And then around the back, he built a goshala, and he donated 8 cows. 5 of them were already milking. And then he donated these big metal bins that you keep food in. And one was filled with rice, one with sugar, one with bajri flour, one with another flour, and one with like that, and big baskets full of vegetables. So we immediately started Food for Life. We started Sunday Feast, and every single week he just kept on bringing. He kept those baskets and buckets full. He gave us clothing because we were in rags. So anyway, you never know. You just surrender to Prabhupada. You surrender to Krishna. You surrender to your spiritual master, and your life just takes on amazing things. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Okay, 6 o'clock, and we're going to give out some stuff.
I just wanted to jog my memory because I remember being in Vancouver in the streets downtown chanting. I think Rita was there.
Yes, Rita was one of the first devotees, Rita and Chaitanya Sima. Yeah.
We were just doing kirtan, and you walked, and you came along.
There it was.
Is that when you were brought to the temple? Was that the day you were?
Yeah.
I remember this young girl, I don't know, maybe 21 or something. We said, yeah, come on over to the temple.
That's right. This is when we met. And I'll just add to that one last thing. May I ask one last thing? That, yes, he's right. And they brought me to the temple, and they said, this is, I'm going to give you a special plate of food. This is called Maha Prasadam. And you have to eat this because it's really a big offense if you leave anything on the plate. You have to eat anything. And he gave me this beautiful plate with all kinds of sweets and flowers, because in those days we always decorated the Lord's place with flowers. So I said, okay. He said, you don't leave anything. I said, okay. So I ate the sweets, and then I gave him back the plate, and he said, but you didn't eat the flowers. I said, I'm not going to eat 2 roses and a carnation. So he ate them for me. And he became my husband.
Well, from the core of all of our hearts, thank you for coming and sharing your last times with Srila Prabhupada. I would like to thank the Vaishnav Academy for inviting us tonight to speak here, and I would like to thank Labanga for translating to Russian, Naresvara for recording this for posterity, and for Devi for translating to Spanish. And I would like to hear a big Haribol of gratitude